Hello, you're watching QTV and welcome to another edition of the Week in Review. And if you're a new viewer, what we do is we take 10 big stories from the week and we go through them in some detail. And as usual, I have a guest, a special guest. This week is no different. It's my colleague and friend, Ansmana Esonyasi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back on this platform, especially in light of, the events in the past couple of days.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And what my colleague there is mentioning, you will see as we go into the program. Really, there's only one place to start this week's program, and that is with the windstorm, which has wreaked havoc across the country and devastated lives and destroyed property. If you're not aware of what's happening or what happened, have a look at this video.
Our visit began in Kotu, where the roof of the Interior Ministry building was blown off by the strong wind. It was then on to Joswang along the Banjul Highway opposite the Atlas petrol station, where a big tree was uprooted by the heavy wind and fell on the road, causing traffic blockage. More damage was spotted along the Westfield-Brikama Highway. Electric poles were separated from the wires. Extension poles fell to the ground. NTC Johnson in Lamen and the front gate of St. Peter's School are typical examples of the destruction caused. NAWEC released a statement saying the amount of damage caused by the windstorm has left many places without electricity and people should expect blackouts for a long period while they work on restoring this.
There you have it. We could have had a whole program about this SO, and in fact in your intro you sort of mentioned the serious things that have happened this week. You went around and you actually did some of the statistics for us, and I just wondered if you could just let viewers who may have not tuned in hear some of those statistics that really of what happened across the country.
Well, the most significant of them is the fatalities, where we have about 10 people who lost their lives as a result of the windstorm.
Sure. And
about 3,000 families affected, more than 1,500 properties destroyed.
Sure.
And the numbers, according to the NDMA director, are highly likely to increase or maybe even double.
Sure.
Before the end of the week. So it's quite ravaging, very unfortunate.
Well, this is it. And when we were preparing for this program, I was going to ask you whether you'd seen anything like it in your life, but then I watched one of the pieces of footage that had been sent in by one of our correspondents from around the country, and they were speaking to a man who was about 80 years old, and he said he had never seen anything like it in his life. And really that was also confirmed by the authorities, who said that the 85 kilometers per hour windstorm were the most ferocious ever seen since records began in this country. And as you said, okay, apart from the statistics, you yourself saw firsthand, and of course you've experienced firsthand devastation. I just wondered if you could just tell the viewers what's happened in your area.
Yes, that assessment actually have been corroborated, as you've highlighted, by the NDMA director himself, who said that this is the worst disaster to have hit our country that he's known of. In my area, as we speak, from Wednesday to date, there's no electricity. Water too, has not been constant, and really it's been a very bad experience, as many, in fact, of my neighbors have had their roofs, taken off by the wind, and some, their fences fell, trees as well, so it's been a very, very sad experience. And the fact that, one of those fatalities that I highlighted earlier is an infant makes it even, more sad. And I have to also say that it is not only the Greater Banjul area and the combos that have been affected.
No.
We can almost in every neighborhood you walk into in this country, you have people that have been seriously affected by this windstorm.
And the North Bank region disproportionately so. 8 people of the 10 that we've heard confirmed are from North Bank region alone. One of them, as you said, every tale is tragic. There was one that really touched me, 45-year-old Alcalo, who got his whole family out and then I think he went to get some, some belongings out, and unfortunately, the roof collapsed and killed him. And so, from all around, there are these stories. Ministerial building, the roof ripped off it. So, some people were saying, oh, these were sort of flimsily built structures, but the ministerial building, I saw that, and that's a really solid structure. There was extensive damage, and the roof was completely blown away.
Well, apart from the mud houses, I mean, in the provinces, most of these properties that have been destroyed, especially within the combo areas, you realize these are very, very strong structures.
Yeah,
so it's not about, the structures not being, the foundation of these structures not being strong enough. But I think it tells also how strong these winds and how violent they've been. Because if you look at the interior building, interior ministry building, I mean, it's one of the strongest structures you can find along that road. So it's quite devastating, and I think this is one episode that, is going to stick with us for a very long time.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I myself, one of those days when, because I had a phone call to make to America, I stayed a bit longer in the office than I would have normally, and so I was here at 10 o'clock. And then the wind started battering the building, and my colleagues had to say to me, don't be an idiot. I mean, because when we looked outside, we actually could see corrugated iron roofs that were being blown away, tossed in the wind, as if it was pieces of paper. And it was and that raged for about 2 hours. And the building felt like it was going to collapse. And this is a solid building that we're talking about. The windows felt as if they were going to implode onto us. And it was really, really scary. And, I'm not ashamed to admit that all of us who were here were scared.
Indeed. I think I was lucky enough. I mean, I remember I read the news on Wednesday, and as soon as I arrived home, right at the gate, I mean, it started raining, and then you had the wind and, all over the place, and then I had to run to my room. Sure. After a couple of minutes, I had a very loud noise, and but I couldn't go out for obvious reasons. Sure. But after, I mean, everything calmed, I went out, and I could see my next door neighbor's roof wasn't there. Sure. Very, very sad, really.
And, we'll spend longer on this because of the severity of it and the importance of it, to the extent where His Excellency the President not only called an emergency meeting, he's issued a statement to the nation, and he's also gone round to some of the affected communities to kind of offer condolences, to sympathize and to empathize with them over really this is unprecedented.
Indeed. I have to say we also have to really commend him for his sort of leadership, especially in an emergency moment like this one. I know there's always this talk of him not acting up, especially during moments like this. But this one really, the fact that he's called an emergency meeting, I mean, just hours after this, and not only that, he made a personal donation of 3 pickup vehicles and also 6 motorcycles to strengthen the response capacity of the NDMA, which I think is very much, I mean, commendable. And to have him also go as far as the last village of this country to assess the level of damage and to see it firsthand, I think it's also quite commendable. Sure. However, one message that I think we should all carry is the fact that we must now come together as a nation and try to support whoever is affected. And I remember the Permanent Secretary, the Minister of Local Government, saying this to us at the press conference on Thursday, that he's encouraging Gambians to adopt best practices that would help strengthen our resilience, I mean, especially within communities that we live in. I think this is very important.
Yeah. Thanks, and that's a great point to end on. As I said, no apologies for actually spending longer on this than perhaps we would on other stories, but it's of such importance and of such significance that we had no option other than to do that. And as you said, lessons learned, but I think what it should promote is that spirit of unity, and let's hope it does that. So thanks for that, Eso. Now on to something else, and again, the message of the spirit of unity comes through in this, although it's something completely different. The Chief of Defence Staff has been around the country on a nationwide tour, visiting military installations, and it's a 12-day tour. It's ended now, and here's a kind of roundup of what happened on the last day. Have a look at this.
My advice to you, in my capacity as your godfather, is to make sure that we remain united. we remain resolute and determined to work towards the maintenance of peace in this country. If we allow not to be divided, I can tell you with certainty, the future of this country is very bright. But if we allow to be divided, either on tribal lines or political lines, trust me, we are going to degenerate into a conflict situation.
CDS there saying we are going to degenerate into a conflict situation. And so the message we heard there was one that he took to every single barracks he went to. There was one which we could have shown any, and he said, don't let politicians use you for their own ends. You know, your duty is to serve the nation. What did you think about the tour generally? Important message.
I've been fortunate to be part of his tour team earlier this year. I think this is the second one he's done. I think that's a very strong but important message that he's sending across to his men. Of course, it is also, I believe,
men and women.
Yeah, men and women. Excuse me. I believe this is in light of the current political situation in the country.
Indeed.
And also, if you look at our recent past, you realize that, of course, you have allegations of the military being involved in, a lot of human rights abuses, the military being involved, or being used as a political tool as well. We've seen all of those things in the past, and to have him really stressing this message again, I think it tells you of how much, the military is also taking note of whatever is happening in the country, and I think it's very important, especially now that we're heading into elections. That's a very strong message.
And I'm glad you mentioned elections, because in one of the other speeches he made, he actually encouraged men and women of the army to vote. He said, yeah, go and register and make sure you vote, but at the same time, even if you vote, when you're wearing this uniform, you have no party allegiance. Your allegiance is to the country. And he drummed that message home almost at every barracks he went to.
Now that is important. In the past, we've seen, I remember covering the last, during the last elections, I covered all the nominations, and I can tell you, during the former president's, nomination, on the day of the nomination, you have, people in uniform, and you have those party T-shirts that they've worn in as well. You can see clearly. And I think that is a very important message, that you cannot be seen actively taking part in politics. You are Gambian, you have your voter's card, go vote for whoever is your candidate of choice, but do not participate in politics. Right. It's really not for our men and women in uniform.
And he drummed home the message also that your primary job is to defend the nation, protect the territorial integrity of the nation, and give the people security. It's not just about that. But aside from that, there was one sort of item which brought a smile to some people's faces, and this was them getting into agriculture. But this is not new, because the CDS's predecessor in April of last year, I seem to remember, they were going to team up with a Brazilian, I think, company, and then they were going to go into agriculture. And his predecessor and both the current one, linked it to security, but this time they're talking about food security. But what's your thought on that?
Now, I think for me it's a good move. The military, this is not the first time. They've been involved in social work, they've been involved in a whole lot of projects, even the university campus in Faraba. It was all, built by members of the Gambian forces. And I think this is one way of also contributing to national development. I think it's highly commendable, it's important, it's one project that we need to support them on. We're a peaceful country, and before you have them at the barracks really not doing much, I think here's one area they can also help.
And I'm glad you touched on that. We're a peaceful country, because really since its independence, Gambia has never gone to war with anybody.
Absolutely.
And as you know, there was even a debate on whether it needed a national army. And so if you are going to have a military, and you're going to have an armed forces, you're going to have a national army, and God forbid that they should ever go to war, but in the absence of that, what do they do? And this is a legitimate thing to get into.
Actually, I think we've had successive governments, come up with highly ambitious agricultural projects, and then in the end it becomes
kind of fizzle out.
Kind of an Elephant Project. And, you know, I think it's important that we also give them a chance and see where this is going to get to. I believe they can do it. I believe they have the human resource and the capacity to be able to do it.
And the discipline.
And the discipline as well. So let's give them a chance.
Yeah, great. Let's give them a chance. Thanks for that, Eso. And so to the Army, we wish you well in your all your endeavors, including, of course, in your agricultural endeavors. And now on to something completely different. Since coming to the Gambia, I find myself telling Gambians that, you know, you have a lot of talented people, but Gambians always seem to be the last to know that they've got some really talented people. Usually the conversation has been around sportsmen and women, but in other fields as well, including in this field. Have a look at this.
My first international recognition was in 2013 when I was nominated for the African Oscars for the Hand of Fate movie, which was my first movie. And when I got that recognition, at first I wasn't taking it seriously. For me, this is just me doing what I love to do. I didn't think it was that of a big deal and value to other people who are on international platforms and doing the work that we do. It takes a lot before you can entitle yourself that. And I have been one person who's always looking for learning opportunities to grow my potential. University was the aim, obviously, but I think I have graduated from university. I got a degree.
Mara Macaulay there, I think she's right. Once you've won international awards of this stature, I think you have graduated. And as well, I was saying in the lead up to that about somebody talented, you know, when we think about the movie industry or we think about theatre, and one has to commend Abunjan Theatre where that was held, you know, a theatre built specifically to put on plays both by the owner of it and you know, sort of import other plays. But Mara Macaulay, I mean, surely every Gambian is rooting for her and really proud of what she's achieved.
Knowing Mariama, I mean, I couldn't be more proud of her. I mean, I have competed with her in high school. I remember during my days at St. Augustine's, she was at Nusrat. I had some very close friends who were also at Nusrat, and whenever we met at national competitions, you know, she's always one of those standout performers. Okay. So, and you know, she's a close friend as well. Yeah. And I have to say,
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have to say, I couldn't be more proud of her. Really, she's been doing this way back from like high school all the way after, and she's been acting, you know, since our high school days. So this has been a lifetime person for her, and I think the whole country really should be proud of Mariama. She's breaking barriers, she's going places, and she's achieved things, you know, in the theatre industry that I don't think any Gambian has ever achieved. I mean, look, people out here, I mean, should just be proud of her. Yeah,
and the First Lady Fatoumata Barbara was at that event, and in fact she dedicated one of the awards to the First Lady, and she said something to the First Lady. She said, you know, for most people what they know about the movie industry is Hollywood, Nollywood and Bollywood. Yeah. And for Hollywood, because one of the awards is actually from Hollywood, that Mariama got, I mean, that's a big thing. That's a huge thing.
I mean, looking at Mariama, I mean, her age and what she's been able to achieve, she's done a few movies. You go to Ebunja Theatre, I mean, she's always there. Yeah. And I think these are the kind of people.
And she was recently in The Lion and the Jewel.
Exactly, in The Lion and the Jewel. Actually, the other character is one of my best friends. So these are people I know. But again, I think the message here is young people like Mariama should be given all the support they need, because she's breaking barriers. And I think she's going to be a reference for so many young people in this country, especially those that want to become, you know, actors and actresses in future. I think this is important.
Well, this is it, and that's a crucial message, because, you know, when I was mentioning about the talent, one of the reasons why I get into discussions about people who have the talent is I say to them, you know, if you know somebody, don't encourage them to go abroad. Encourage them to stay here, develop that talent, and inspire others. And I think what she has done and what she has achieved is certainly going to do that, surely.
Absolutely. And for authorities, especially the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, I think they need to start investing more into theatre. Sure. Now that we have, you know, our young people breaking barriers, going as far as winning awards from, I mean, Hollywood. It's the biggest award you can get anywhere. Sure. I mean, everybody wants to be on Hollywood, and to have Hollywood recognize your work, I think this is one thing we should all be proud of.
and not just recognized, it was like best upcoming actress, which against stiff competition.
Really huge.
So that's really huge. But thanks for that, Esso. And the film is called Mebet, M-E-B-E-T.
Yeah.
And if you can't get to watch it, I would say try and get to watch it. But if you can't, if you go on YouTube, there is actually a trailer for the movie, which gives you a full flavor of the film and also of Mara Makoli's acting talent. So check it out, Mebet, M-E-B-E-T.
Yeah, it's a wall of water. I think it means, it's like dream. It means dream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And in on the YouTube one, you'll get a clue about what the film is all about. And trust me, it'll make you want to watch it. Thanks for that, Esso. And for those who don't speak Wolof, there are subtitles, so don't panic. Okay. Thanks for that. And now on to something completely different. You know, as we get towards this time of the year, in other parts of the world, you'll hear people talk about Eid al-Adha. Here in Gambia, Tobaski. And it means one thing. Lots and lots of rams get sold and slaughtered. Have a look at this clip.
The cost of buying a ram appears to increase every year, making it difficult for some to afford. Musa Njai, the president of the Livestock Dealers Association, says it is important to have all livestock dealers in one group.
For us, when it is 2 months before Tobaski, we start communicating with countries because most of the rams we have here are imported, and those dealers will also ask us about the security of the country and the business atmosphere, amongst other things.
The cost of buying a ram appears to increase every year, making it difficult.
Now, you heard the voice of our colleague, Loliem Kamara, fading away there, but I think, you know, the thing she said about that it's fading away, you know, the cost of the ram, it goes up every year. In some countries, of course, what you have is that they say that, you know, there are two things certain in life, death and taxes. I think in Gambia you could probably add that the cost of rams will go up every year.
True.
And so one of the reasons I chose this is not just because Tobaski is fast approaching, but also because of what we were talking about at the beginning of the program, the devastation caused by the windstorm. That is bound to impact people's expectations. Many of them will be expecting to buy a ram, and now you're caught in this dilemma. Do I purchase a ram or use the money to buy my corrugated iron roof and replace it and so on? Big dilemma, surely.
You know, the slaughtering of rams is one of the most important aspects of the Tobaski celebration in Islam.
Sure.
And I understand we're in the pandemic and, you know, with the economic situation and all of that.
Sure.
But given the incidents, I mean, that have happened in the past couple of days, I think it's rather unfortunate that you have some you know, ram owners, you know, increasing the prices. You know, it's for some, really, I find it really very hard to understand. The cheapest you can find in the market now wouldn't be anything below $10,000.
Yeah,
and how many people can afford that? Yeah. It's very sad. In fact, in Islam, they'll tell you that, I mean, events like Tobaski is when we should support each other. So when you have people, you know, increasing
profiteering,
you know,
essentially.
Exactly, you know, profiteering, it's quite sad. And I think this is you know, something we need to look at.
Now, one of the reasons, again, I chose this because, and I'm glad you've made that point about, you know, the COVID pandemic and the impact. But one of the reasons I chose it is because, again, in a discussion that we were having around the fact that the World Bank figures showed that during the pandemic, in almost every other country where remittances had gone down, in the Gambia, they'd actually hit record levels. Official figures alone, $588 million was sent in a year. And that's not people getting on a plane and saying, take this money to my family. That's just through the official channels. More than $500 million to the Gambia. And even if you read the report on the website of the World Bank, they say they can't even explain it. So is that part of the reason that, you know, despite of the pandemic sort of impacting people's livelihoods here, because they have family outside and that money is coming in, Do you think that the people who, I've accused them of profiteering, is it that they're aware that this is happening?
Well, I don't think it's, for me, I don't think it has anything to do with those figures. I think it's in fact becoming a norm now that every time, there is a major, event, especially religious events. We've seen when it's time for Christmas, we've seen when it's time for Korite or Tobaski or even Ramadan. I mean, there is this hike in price, and it's something I find very hard to understand. I think it's becoming a norm, and until, one problem we have is I don't think we have anything like price control in this country, because the way that prices keep increasing, I mean, it's just beyond me.
Yeah,
really.
and price control is a dangerous one to go down, because when governments bring it in, people complain. And so, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. But I think you've made a very valid point there about the fact that, when you consider that a lot of these are around religious celebrations, that it's quite ironic that people then, profit and profiteer around them. So this one, it might not change, but let's hope they watch this and have a bit of a conscience next year. Who knows? You never know. Thanks again, Eso. Now, on to our next story. This one I was discussing with some friends online on Twitter, WhatsApp, and Facebook. And as usual, we got to the thing about, African politics and African politicians. What has happened this week in South Africa is almost unprecedented in Africa. What am I talking about? Jacob Zuma. Have a look.
Zuma was sentenced after South Africa's constitutional court found him guilty of contempt for disobeying its order to appear before a commission of corruption inquiry that was set up by himself. Zuma was sentenced on 29 June for disregarding an order to give evidence at an inquiry into corruption during his 9 years in power. He only testified once at the inquiry and never came back, thus landing himself in trouble. Zuma had initially refused to hand himself in, but the Jacob Zuma Foundation said in a short statement on Wednesday that he had decided to comply. Despite threats from his supporters to block any attempt by the police to arrest him, the police had warned that they were prepared to arrest him if he did not hand himself in by midnight on Wednesday, which he eventually did.
He eventually handed himself in by midnight on Wednesday. Now, so this one could start with 10 different things. The fact that an African president, ex-president, is going to jail in his own country. The fact that some of his supporters tried to stop it. The fact that it was all to do with corruption. So let's start with the fact that it was to do with corruption, an inquiry that he set up, and he never imagined that he would be caught in the web. What I found ironic was that we criticize corrupt politicians, and yet when we're trying to send one of them to jail, people in their thousands rally and say, don't send him to jail. So if we give that message, surely we're encouraging corruption, are we not?
Absolutely. I mean, the Jacob Zuma story is one that really, I almost busted into laughter the first time I saw that online. I was like, well, really? Here's a guy whose presidency, for the most part, has been embroiled in so much controversy here and there. Allegations of corruption have been, he's been dealing with these allegations from day one.
Indeed.
And it's just unfortunate. But again, I think you've touched on a very salient point. Despite all of these allegations, the fact that you have people coming out in their numbers to say you can't send him to jail because he's an ex-president, I think in some way we're also encouraging corruption. I mean, the irony here is to have him set up, this inquiry, and then he gets caught up in the middle of it.
And then refuses to cooperate
and then refuses to cooperate. I think for Africa, it's about time, if we really are serious about fighting corruption, that our leaders also start showing example. The fact that he refused to hand himself in the first place, I think it's rather unfortunate.
And I had a debate with somebody in a WhatsApp group, and they were saying, it's an embarrassment, it's a disgrace, he's an ex-president. I said, yes, but if a policeman is caught taking a bribe for corruption and sent down, you're not going to take to the streets and protest on his behalf. You'll say, yes, send him to jail. Now, we're talking about somebody who is accused of embezzling and being bribed, not tens of thousands, but millions, if not
in fact,
billions.
I think any serious
dollars.
supporter, any serious supporter of Zuma, if it were me, really, I would be ashamed to take to the streets to say, don't send him to jail.
Yeah.
Now, he set up that inquiry, you know, to fight corruption. And the same inquiry, you know, during the investigations, realized that,
led
well,
to him. Yeah.
you know, you're also deeply involved. Come on, why wouldn't you be held accountable for your actions? I think they should just, you know, let him serve his time in jail.
Yeah. And
At least it will send a message
Yeah.
to, you know, anyone in position of authority to also know that, I mean, whatever you do, you know, during your time in office,
Sure.
it may come back to haunt you if you don't do good.
Sure, and what was even more ridiculous was that he took the his appeal to a lower court, and there's no country in the world where a lower court can overturn the decision of a higher court. So as a president, he should have known better.
Zuma, he's just not new to controversy.
Absolutely. So as you said, let him serve his time in jail. And on that note, we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have 5 more stories. So don't go away. Join us after this break.
The best product in town is back. QCell's MiFi router. Get the best MiFi in the country for just $2,800 and connect up to 15 users with 4G internet speeds and a long-lasting battery life. So rush now to any of our customer care locations and get the best for less while stocks last. For more info, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Boss, the Gambia's quality network. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darami, and my very special guest is Ansumana S. Onyasi. So thanks for your insight and your words of in the discussion so far.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it, and thanks for being in the show.
Welcome.
Now, you and I, we love many things.
Sure.
And we love football.
Yeah.
And it's a shared passion, and I think what has happened in the Gambia this year in the GFF First Division has been, we're talking about, you know, unprecedented this, unprecedented that. This was unforeseen and unprecedented. You're thinking, what on earth is he talking about? Have a look at this.
From playing Nawetan in Brikama 9 years ago to deserved champions of the GFF First Division League, goals from Patrick Silva and Ibu Sanyang gave Fortune a 2-1 victory against second-placed Walidan in a tense game on Thursday to confirm their status as winners of the coveted trophy. It was everything one could wish for in a top-of-the-table clash. It had skills, excitement, and was closely fought, as the first half ended goalless. The win over Walidan gave Fortune a 12 points lead over their opponents and meant they could not be caught. Fortune won the title in style, winning 12 matches, drawing 10, with just 1 defeat so far, with 3 matches left to the end of the league season.
Dulcet tones there of our colleague Mamadou Gajaga.
Yeah.
Now, so when I lived in England for many years, and at the start of each season, there was a game that we would play, myself and my friends. This is predates even the internet and you know, things like WhatsApp and social media. We would say, these are the teams that are going to be in the top division, even before it was the Premier League in England. And we would say, where do you think they're going to finish? And we would guess, you know, obviously we would have a bias towards our own teams, but surely in the Gambia, if they had played the same game last season, would anybody other than those belonging to Fortune have put them as potential champions?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think anyone saw this coming. Fortune, for me, I think their story is more like that of Leicester City a few years ago in England. You know, and the style with which they did it,
they won,
you know,
in style.
Just amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
They've lost only 1 game, you know, whole season.
Yeah.
Quite unprecedented. I don't think we've had any such record in the league in this country. So, congratulations to Fortune. I mean, they've done it at the expense of the Walidans, the Real Dibanjos who have, you know, in terms of the facilities, you know, the resources, you know, you just can't compare
everything history. And I think you're right in drawing the sort of analogy with Leicester City, because before they won it with Claudio Ranieri as the manager, they'd never won the top division in England. And you know, famously, of course, the team that Gary Lineker, former England captain and now, sort of serious pundit, team that he played for, his home team. Yeah. And he had famously said at the start of the season that if they won the league, he would present his show, Match of the Day, naked or in his underpants. People didn't hold him to it, but that was how unlikely it seemed. That's why he could make that prediction. And I have to say, even as a Manchester United fan, because I knew my team were not going to win it, I was actually rooting for Leicester. Let them do it. And of course they did it. And fortune, as you said, unprecedented, unforeseen, and they did it in style. This was no fluke win. They won it with 3 games to go. They cannot be caught. And we say with 3 games to go, and that's because they're actually 12 points ahead of the team that's in second. So it really has been an amazing performance by them.
Very amazing. I mean, you mentioned fortune a few years ago. Not many people actually have heard of fortune. I mean, they used to play in the Nawetan in Brikama.
As we heard.
And then, from the regionals, they made it to the 3rd division, the 2nd division, and here they are. And all of this have happened within, a couple of years. I think we haven't had any such record in the league. And I know it's going to be difficult to maintain it up there, especially with the likes of Real de Banjul and the Walidans, like I said, who have, the GPAs who have the money and the influence and all of that. But I think this is also going to give all of those other teams, especially those in the 2nd division, who are coming into the league next season, to say, you can do it. If we can, why not you can?
That's it. And as you've mentioned there, Walidan and so on, I mean, if you'd gone back 6-7 games ago, you would not have imagined that a top of the table clash was going to be Fortune and Walidan. And then Walidan went on this amazing run, kind of tried to close the gap because Fortune drew, and then suddenly there was a chance that had they lost, it would have made the gap 9 points, and there would have still been 3 games to play. So, mathematically, it could have still been on, but they kind of slammed the door in their
just
face
amazing.
and said,
it's amazing.
We've come this far, we're not going to let it slip. And I unfortunately couldn't be at the stadium, but I tuned in on the radio, and halftime it was 0-0, and I'm thinking, are they going to do it? And of course they did it.
And we have to give them credit as well. The stadium is almost full to capacity nowadays, and that is because of fortune. After the first half of the season, and with that long run of winning every game week in, week out, people started showing interest in the league.
They do it.
And it's going to the point where now you have other TV stations also showing the league, live. Right. And that is, how much fortune is also contributing to the growth of our league. And I think, we just have to be happy for them.
Sure. And one of the things that really pleased me is that, I was saying in another context about the talents that there has been in the Gambia. Trust me, people, if you haven't seen Fortune, I don't know the winger's name, they have a winger very skillful. And, I'm not trying to sort of destroy Fortune, but I would be surprised if some European team doesn't come looking for this kid and say, we want that guy.
And, this Fortune story couldn't have come at a better time. Now that Gambia has also qualified to the AFCON, I think this, it's a blessing in disguise for us.
Sure. And, who knows, one day we can see more local players getting into the national team, not just foreign-based players, and that would be good. But please do, as Eso has said, when Fortune went on this kind of winning run and this winning streak, people started flocking to the stadiums, and really we've seen some amazing crowds at the Independence Stadium. Let's hope that continues.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. And now on to something else. In some figures, in some circumstances, rather, this gentleman is controversial. In some, he's not. Who am I talking about? Kunta Kinte. However, some people are proposing something very interesting regarding Kunta Kinte. What's he talking about? Have a look and you will see.
Everything one could wish for.
Despite the popularity and historical importance of Kunta's life, his family, the people of Jufuri and activists believe Kunta's life should be nationally celebrated in the form of a National Remembrance Day. Thus, the formation of the Kunta Kinte Foundation and the maiden commemoration of the day he was captured in 1750. Lamin Sise is a great-grandson of Kunta Kinte, and he explains the reasons and importance of celebrating Kunta Kinte Day.
The Gambia government, especially the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and our parliamentarians, to make sure they discuss about this day and make sure it became a national day, a national holiday. Definitely.
July 5th is what they propose as the national day to celebrate the life and a national holiday, and just happens to be Cape Verde Independence Day, by the way.
Yeah.
But Ezo, you know, you saw what was there and what was being proposed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, you know, it's important. Kunta is an iconic figure in our history, and his story is being told by so many people around the world. I mean, of course, thanks to Alex Haley's book and movie. Yeah. But I think what this family has actually been advocating for this for so many years. Right. And I think it's about time that government, with the help of the National Council for Arts and Culture, I mean, that they do something about it. Yeah, yeah. For me, what the saddest part is the fact that he was being remembered. Mm-hmm. I mean, on this day, and there was no one from the Ministry of Tourism, and no one from even the National Center for Arts and Culture was there. Right. Of course, I know Hasum did pass by and then he left, but right. You know, I think this is one thing we really need to look at. Mm. You have Kunta's life being celebrated almost all over the world. Yes, but right. In Gambia, you go to his home village in Jufure, and you would be shocked. You look at the way the family lives. I mean, you have family members still living in a mud house. Right. And I remember going on tour with the minister last year, and he even promised, I mean, to make a personal donation. I'm not sure if he's done that yet.
I remember seeing that.
But really, I think it's sad that, you know, we're not celebrating our own people. Sure. And really, if you look at how much revenue Kunta's story brings us, I mean, every year, it's about time we you know, start celebrating his life, not just, you know, mere lip service. Sure. You know, I think this is very much possible. You know, and I have to say his family, you know, needs support as well. Sure. It's just sad the way, you know, we're not really celebrating Kunta's life.
Yeah, and you talked about the revenue it brings and so on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm old enough to remember, even before the book came out, there was an article about Alex Haley, and I remember reading it, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. I mean, in those days, long before the internet was even dreamt of, we actually photocopied it and passed it around, saying, look, this guy is, the article was about the fact that this book was coming out, and it told you the story of how he was able to trace back his ancestor. Yeah. And what it did in America was that, and Gambians may like it or don't know it, whatever, but for many African Americans, they'd never even heard of the Gambia. Yeah. That book put Gambia firmly on the map and made them aware that there was this place, and that, hey, guess what? We may have come from there. Yeah. And then some of them started coming here in significant numbers.
I remember in 2010, during the Roots Homecoming Festival, I mean, hundreds of African Americans came here, and I remember some of them, you know, at Makati Square in Banjul, you know, on national TV saying, I mean, they're here because they read about Kunta's life, and so he's in some way contributing to our economy, and also selling Gambia's name out there. So this is one person whose life is worth celebrating. Unfortunately, we're not doing enough when it comes to celebrating Kunta's life.
And thanks for that. And I suspect one of the reasons why is that if you decide to celebrate the life of one man, somebody somewhere is going to object, saying, why that one man, why not another? But I suspect, but thanks for that, Ezo. And now on to something completely different. And this is something that we probably should have followed after the Ram story. Yeah. And it's about people flocking to cross at the Banjul Barra crossing. If you've never been there during when Tobaski is approaching, please take a visit there and you'll be amazed by what you'll see. Have a look. This will give you a flavor.
When we have peak periods like the Tobaski or Tobaski, like the Korite or the Tobaski, or during those periods, you know, like chronic recitations and those kind of, you know, peak periods, Gamos, we deploy all 3 ferries. And that is exactly what we plan to do for this Tobaski. So all we ask for the public, let them start their journey as early as they could, instead of, you know, everybody trying to cross in a single day.
Now, I have to hold my hand up and saying there's a bit of mischief in me choosing that particular bit, so because you hear him saying there, plan your journey early, don't cry and cross in a single day. But you and I know nobody's listening to that. What they are going to do is they're going to try and cross in a single day.
Yeah,
that's what happens every year.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important that they've made this move to deploy all 3 ferries and have them, you know, 24 hours. I think it's important because, I mean, in anticipation of the Tobaski, you have a lot of people crossing from the North Bank area, crossing to Banjul, I mean, to buy food stuff and all of that. And you also have people also crossing from the Banjul area to Bara, you know, to North Bank and other parts of the country to go and celebrate with family members. So I think it's important. But again, if you go to the terminal, I mean, especially around this time, it's always congested, and you know, with 1 or 2 ferries operating is always very difficult. So I think it is important.
And I'm glad that he used the opportunity to address concerns of people who said, well, why can't you do it all the time?
All the time.
And he said, well, actually, that's not sensible because, you know, the ferries need repair, they need, you know, running repairs, and you can't do that if you're running a 24-hour service. Just would
in
not
fact,
make
I mean,
sense.
the danger in doing that is, I mean, what happens when, you know, 2 of them maybe have a breakdown and you have only 1 operating? It's going to be very difficult.
Exactly.
So I think it's wise that they have 1, you know, in reserve while the other 2 are operating. And so, but yes, it's important to have them all operating, especially during this period. I mean, when you have so many people crossing in, you know, from both ends of the terminals, and I think it's important.
And perhaps we might send our cameras there, so to see whether people have taken heed
hopefully,
of his plea to not leave it all and try and cross on one day. But thanks for that. And now on to our penultimate story. Some people who suffered greatly during the 2017 floods have been rehoused, and rehoused in very nice houses. Have a look.
It is almost 4 years since the devastating flood struck the community of Kunta. Now, the humanitarian emergency response has brought comfort for some victims. A project facilitated by the National Disaster Management Agency and funded by Bin Khalifa Foundation has led to the construction of 23 self-contained houses for some victims who were severely hit by the flood. The NDMA is handing over the houses to the beneficiaries.
The donor is yet to be here to do the official handing over. But when you build a house, it's not being occupied by anyone, it might easily spoil. Because when it was built, before we even reached today, children were throwing stone on the glasses. Some of the glasses were broken. So that is why we felt that we should hand over this house.
These are some of the lucky ones among the over 100 households that were hit by the August 2017 flood in Kunta. Without the humanitarian support by Bin Khalifa Foundation, these beneficiaries would have still been struggling for proper housing.
They would have still been struggling for proper housing. And so, again, every time I choose one of these videos, I choose a particular for a reason. One of the reasons I chose it was because when I looked at it, the houses appeared to have been built, the original houses, in what looked to be an obvious area that was at threat of flooding. And so I'm thinking it's nice that these particular families have been rehoused and given much better quality housing. But I look around the country, as I did, 6-7 weeks ago when I went around, and there are loads and loads of places that are being built in flood risk areas. Who can change that? What should we do to stop that?
I listened to my colleague Choi there mention, but these are the lucky ones. I can tell you they couldn't be luckier because I remember on Thursday the director of the NDMA saying that I mean, they were very happy, and as soon as they moved, some of them, had the roofs of the houses they were occupying,
previous houses,
the previous houses taken off by the recent windstorm. So I was fortunate to go with the vice president, to Kunta in the aftermath of that deadly flood that happened there 3 years ago, and I can tell you, it was really very, very sad, at the end, and so many people, they lost their livelihoods, had their properties destroyed. But again, what is clear is the fact that I mean, where they've built their houses, these are waterways, and, you know, very much prone to, you know, such disasters.
The flooding,
and I really think it's good that they've been able to build new houses for them where they've moved in. But again, if you look at the way the houses are built, you realize that, you know, at least it's a meter above you know, so which I think is good.
And they're much more solid in terms of that.
But I think people should also, you know, be made to understand that building, you know, on waterways, you know, is very risky. And I think you have it around, even here within the Combos. You go to the Bakote areas, the Manja areas, you have that a lot. And you know, it's always very risky.
Sure. And, you know, as I said, we wish them well and we wish them good luck. And as you said, they are really the lucky ones because some of the houses that they were living in are now without roofs. So just in time. Thanks for that, Eso. And now on to our final story. We always talk about, you know, building capacity, giving people the proper resources, but we don't always do it. This is one story that I was really pleased about because it did exactly the kind of thing that we always talk about but don't do. What am I talking about? Our border posts. Have a look at this.
These gifts will add value to our work because we all know records are very important and records need to be sustainable. And providing these gifts will help us to make our record to be sustainable and to be accessible at any time we need them.
There you heard, official there. So all 7 of the border posts around the country have been resourced by this donation of software, hardware, the equipment to keep proper records. There was a bit we didn't show there just because of time, and that was one of the people who did the donation, although it was ECOWAS that did the donation, but the Sierra Leone High Commissioner, Mrs. Sherif, was there, and she said something quite important. She said, now that you've all got these computers at the 7 border posts, try and get the ministry to find a way that can link you all up in a single kind of system where you can share information electronically. That's what we need, surely.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a highly commendable gesture. You go to some of these border posts and you would be very much disappointed.
Taking stuff by hand.
You know, exactly. I mean, what if we have incidents like Wednesdays and then, you know, you lose everything to the rains or God forbid there is a fire incident and all of that. It's quite sad. And I think she's made a very salient point. Once you have the technology, in fact, in this day and age, I can't believe that we still have, you know, an important department like that, you know, being under-resourced and struggling to even keep records. It's just sad. So this is a very important move. It's a very important gesture. And I hope, the materials will be maintained. And that,
you're reading my mind.
You know, I hope they will be maintained and that, you know, there would be some, you know, kind of a system wherein you would be able to share information. This links is talking about, I think, is important.
That's right. We need continuity. We need sustainability.
Absolutely.
And we're going to get that if you maintain the equipment that you've been given. It's all very nice giving somebody a nice shiny computer, but if you use and abuse it and then it's not repaired, a year later it's worthless and you have to throw it away. So really, I hope that they've kind of built into this some kind of sustainability because it's a crucial area. It's a crucial department. You know, this is the immigration.
I couldn't agree more. And talking about sustainability, I think this is one major problem we have in this country. You have so many, donations being made and projects being commissioned.
Some of which we feature.
You know, some of which we feature. But when it comes to maintaining this, is always a problem. And I think it's important that the message is also sent across to, you know, our men and women in uniform, especially those who've been, you know, lucky enough to benefit from this donation to, you know, ensure that these things are maintained.
And I'm kind of smiling because there's a proposal which I was going to put, and I mention it here, and hopefully somebody from one of the ministries is watching. You know, because I'm aware that we featured many of these donations, I've always thought, okay, is it the job, is it the duty of the media to monitor what happens? Or should there be a government department which has a list of all the donations that they've received, and then they go around and they check 6 months, 9 months, a year. Okay, Department X got this donation. How's the equipment performing? Do they need extra software? Do they need repairs? You know, one single department that has a list of all the donations made to all the government departments and agencies, and they go around and check.
I think it would be important to have a department like that.
Sure.
I can tell you it's not easy, you know, monitoring some of these government agencies. Sure. I mean, I remember the Auditor General going to the National Assembly and even complaining about how, you know, they are being frustrated, you know, by the system. And I think it's important there is some kind of a monitoring mechanism in place. Sure. You know, I think it will also help, you know, in terms of sustaining some of these materials. But again, just a quick one.
Sure, we're running out of time.
Absolutely, before I forget. I remember when the Ministry of Fisheries caught fire, I think Fisheries, if I'm right, they lost most of their records.
Right.
And that's because you have them on paper, not in the system.
Sure.
So it's important that such donations are made.
Thank you, and a great point and a great story to end on. And so, just to say thank you for coming and thank you for your insight.
You're most welcome.
Much appreciated. And to the viewers, thank you for joining us this week, and we hope you'll join us again next week. It just remains for me to say goodbye and see you again next week. Goodbye.